everyone, and welcome to the Hero Index Podcast, Episode 3. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Marcus McNeal, your host and editor at HeroIndex.net. I am joined today by my panel, same as always, film columnist at HeroIndex.net, David Murphy. Thank you for coming back.
No problem. Hello, everyone.
And comic book columnist Erin Keepers. Erin, thank you for joining us again, too.
Yeah, of course.
So, of course, the big news this weekend is what else? Wonder Woman. DC's latest installment of the DCEU, I guess you could say saga, came out this Friday. Gal Gadot stars in the very first solo Wonder Woman movie. Our podcast is basically going to be completely dedicated to discussing that movie and the DCEU for this week. And I just want to go around, get everybody's opinions on it. I had a chance to see it myself. I'll hold those and reserve those thoughts a little bit. And I'll go ahead and let David kick off. David, by the way, has a video review for it on our YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. It's really great. Make sure you go check it out. David, what are your thoughts on Wonder Woman and its greater ramifications for the DCEU?
Okay. Well, firstly, I did enjoy it. I gave it a B, which is normally what I give to a film that either I've enjoyed or I feel has some admirable qualities, but maybe it's a bit flawed. I don't think it was too flawed, Wonder Woman. I just don't think it actually had many. I don't know. There was nothing new to it, I didn't think. It's just, mm-hmm. I think a lot of it is, like I said in the last podcast, is I think it's gotten a lot of praise, mm-hmm. which I'm not entirely sure it deserves. It's getting close to the overrated. Say, imagine if Marvel had released this film. I don't think so many damns would be given about it. I just don't think it's done anything apart from having the female protagonist, which I'm sure which will come up a few times today. I don't think it's really done anything new for the genre. It's done something new for the DCEU in that it's actually a good, straightforward, enjoyable film, which they haven't managed up till now.
Yeah.
Well, maybe some people would argue Man of Steel, and some even more crazy people would argue Dawn of Justice.
That's still pretty divisive. Yeah, you got fans of both, for sure.
Yeah, but no, I enjoyed it. I didn't get bored. I didn't really, when I sat there taking my notes, no, I didn't write anything particularly negative. I don't think Gal Gadot's the best actress in the world, but she's certainly one of the better looking ones, and she certainly handles herself very well. But yeah, I mean, I've mentioned it in my review. I still just don't think. I think one thing that Marvel has done so well with certainly their heroes anyway, so they get their personalities across and they get the right actors and actresses into those roles. I'm not seeing that in the DCEU. I'm just seeing them playing them out as icons, not as people, as characters, as interesting. You wouldn't want to sit down and have a conversation with any of the DCEU, but you'd sit down and have a conversation with Tony Stark or Thor. They're interesting people, or Bruce Banner. I think there's a lack of personality sometimes.
I wonder if that's indicative of DC's characters as well, too, because the knock on the comics is characters tend to be on that side of things too. Nobody wants to go out for beers with Bruce Wayne. Well, first off, he wouldn't go out for any beers because he had to fight crime.
Yeah, he's too busy.
Erin, what about your thoughts on Wonder Woman?
I'm pretty well right there with David. I thought it was an alright movie. It wasn't as amazing as I wanted it to be, but it also wasn't as bad as it could have been. And I feel like that's about what I've come to kind of anticipate from DC movies. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like as formulaic as the Marvel films are, they're still very, very entertaining. And we've gotten to the point where we expect them to at least be fun and pretty solid movies, even if they're not amazing films or anything, which is great. It's fine. We're allowed to just have fun movies. DC movies across the board have always just kind of been mediocre. I think the last DC films I really enjoyed was Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. And after that, it's kind of just been, all right, we get what we get.
It's more or less picking and choosing the elements that you like out of those films, rather than
very much
really going for the whole thing.
Exactly. So yeah, I definitely had a few problems with Wonder Woman. I thought that the script was really uninspired. Like, I didn't think that the dialogue had very much going on, although there were a couple, like, really solid lines where I was like, they could have explored this more and done, like, a whole social justice thing. Like, there's a moment with, like, corsets or whatever, Wonder Woman experience, like, being introduced to modern, quote unquote modern life, and she's like, why would a woman need to tuck her stomach? And the other woman is like, only a skinny girl would ask that. And I thought that was a very relevant comment. I was like, oh snap, okay, that's what this movie's gonna be. And then it never quite, it had a few lines like that, and it never really decided to go after them like it could have. So, I don't know. I kept wanting it to be just a little bit more, but I'm still happy with what it is.
Right. I have to echo a lot of your sentiments, too. I think the last podcast, for sure, David, you were very prophetic in some of the things that you stated. From the looks of it, it looked like it was going for more of a Marvel sort of tone. So a lot more levity, which is one of the things that I enjoyed. There was quite a bit more levity in Wonder Woman than we've seen probably in Man of Steel, Suicide Squad, and Batman v Superman all put together, and then with a +2 multiplier.
I think I did.
Tried to be funny.
Yeah,
didn't really land.
I think I'd actually laughed out loud at one point. I think when she says, when they put glasses on Diana, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that doesn't make her the most beautiful woman you've ever seen." I thought, that was good. That I genuinely did laugh out loud at that, and that's more than I've ever done at. There's been a few mocking laughs at the likes of Suicide Squad and Dawn of Justice, but intentional comedy.
Funny,
yes.
And that's one of the things I really did like about the movie, especially with Chris Pine and Steve Trevor. I felt like he spoke like a real person. He behaved like a real person. I think as far as ancillary or secondary characters goes, he was pretty strong in that role, and I enjoyed him too. Gal Gadot, you mentioned her deficiencies sometimes as an actress. I think Patty Jenkins got the absolute best performance you're ever going to get out of Gal Gadot.
Agreed.
And I did put that in my review, that she deserves. I think her direction is absolutely brilliant. Actually, I thought the whole composition of the film and the way the scenes, just the rhythm in the scenes itself, is quite exceptional. Above what we've come used to in most Marvel films, actually.
From what I understand, too, I'll have to back this up with some evidence, but I do remember reading that Zack Snyder was actually on set to help direct some of the action scenes, too, and you totally see his trademark over all of it, which...
that explains the slow-mo.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I went into this really having, I don't want to say low expectations. Well, I guess, low expectations, because I really did not like Batman v Superman or Suicide Squad. We were coming off of those. What I wanted this movie to do was tell a simple story, get it right, be enjoyable, and have me leaving the theater feeling like I have a good time, money well spent.
Sure.
And it accomplished all of those things, I believe. I don't think this is something that we're going to say, it's one of the greatest comic book films ever made. No. It's going to be one for the ages, similar to a Dark Knight or Iron Man, Spider-Man 2, something like that. It's just going to be along that lines of, once again, you were very prophetic too in your comments last week and in your review. It's Captain America meets Thor kind of smashed together, and the quality is in line with those films, those first slate of solo Marvel films that we saw. And that's very apt. I think I would probably rate it just scooped higher than either one of those. I just personally found a lot more to enjoy in it. I did feel like towards the end of it, it started to drag a little bit, really getting into the third act. It seemed to kind of want to rush to get to where it was going, while everything else in the movie felt very methodical and built up. A lot of character development, everything like that. So the fact that the ending and then the fight with the main villain at the end seemed to happen at a really fast clip. It was really sort of off-putting. And then we had a long gap in development going into that. But I tried to look at it and not put any sort of bias on it, of this being the first female-led superhero film or whatever my preconceived notions of the DCEU going into this prior, and just take it for what it was and just sit back and have a good time, open my mind up a little bit and see where they were going for. And for the most part, I really enjoyed it, especially I think it was strongest in the first two acts. Definitely by the time we got to the second act, I think that's some of the strongest stuff we've seen either Marvel or DC side in a long time until it trailed off a little bit later. But yeah, I would give it a solid B minus or so, somewhere along that line. But I think what it has greater ramifications for is its implications for the DCEU, which has been much maligned, both in the films they've already released and their slate coming up. This is the first film, and it feels weird saying this, but that they announced that the slate prior to Suicide Squad coming out, they actually got released, because we had initially Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Cyborg, Aquaman, all these films DC lined up, all of them in some state right now, except for Aquaman. James Wan seems to be having a good wrangle on that right now with Jason Momoa. They're actively filming, and it looks like everything's going to be on track. Batman got... We know the details with that, and Ben Affleck jumping off the film. Flash is nowhere to be seen. Doesn't have a director. The whole movie has been pulled off the slate at this point in time. We've come to the opinion we're just not going to get Cyborg movie. It's not going to happen. Then they've announced this myriad of other films that are going to be coming out too. So this was going to be a good litmus test as far as what the projects are going to look like here and after the reception that they got from Suicide Squad. And for that, I think it was mostly a success. I think it was a success. And I don't know if that increases anticipation or make the potential fall all that much greater. David, what do you think about the reception to Wonder Woman for the next slate of DCEU films? Is this going to be something that we can expect, okay, this quality is going to continue, or is it just a little bit of a peak before the fall to come?
I think it's not. This was just a very good practice run. The real test comes on Justice League. If that is as bad, or even goes close to kind of circling the drain again of Suicide Squad or Dawn of Justice, yeah, I think they can pretty much forget the rest of their slate. I mean, whether they want to just make it just to turn a quick dollar, I don't know. But I think a lot of people will turn their backs on the franchise after that. I have a lot of misgivings about the Justice League. I don't think enough groundwork has been done. We've only really established one really new character to cinema with Wonder Woman now. Batman, Superman, we already knew an awful lot about them. I mean, all right, they want to do different versions of them, and yes, the Superman they've got is very different to the, Richard Donner Superman that's obviously continued by Richard Lester, and even Bryan Singer's Superman Returns was a continuation of that same vein. So, yeah, I mean, we've got The Flash, we've got Aquaman, got Cyborg coming in. I mean, we don't know any of these characters, so we're going to have to get to know them in the running time of the film. If you compare that to the Avengers, all the main players had already had their origins, explored. And they were all, with the exception of the Hulk, they were all new characters to mainstream cinema. So, and plus they had one more film under their belt. And the other thing is, yes, they've wasted one of those films in Suicide Squad because most of that is going to have no implications on Justice League. So, yeah, I mean, my anticipation still isn't very high for the Justice League. But I hope it does somehow fix all the problems they've had before, but I don't see how it's going to do it at the moment. It's going to be, even to produce a decent film, it's going to have to work against a lot of its own problems of its own making to even make a reasonable film. To be a great film like The Avengers, I think that's beyond it at this stage. So,
yeah, because it'd be fabulous if it's a great movie. Like, obviously everyone wants DC to do well and make good movies, but it's such a struggle at this point. They're fighting such an uphill battle. that even if we get a really, really even if Wonder Woman had been end all be all best movie ever, I'm not sure that it really would have been enough for people to trust DC again. Like, we've been burned before.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those instances where I try to relate it back to Marvel, and I always hate bringing up Marvel when we speak about the DCEU, but it's the only other major comic book film franchise we have to go off as a test.
They shouldn't keep pitching their product so close. Yeah. It's obviously so modeled on what Marvel are doing.
And, everything wasn't great for Marvel when it first started either. It's easy to forget some of the struggles they went through. Iron Man came out, was instantly great. Huge movie, huge success. And I think some of the greatness of it just got stolen a little bit. The thunder got taken away because The Dark Knight came out, a month after that? Yeah,
a couple of months later, yeah.
Then we had The Incredible Hulk, which wasn't superb. It was, one of those midday afternoon on a Saturday, I'll watch it when it's running on basic cable sort of movies, and it's not terrible to watch through sort of things. Then we had Iron Man 2, which a lot of people will say is probably the worst film that Marvel has made.
Yeah, I'd go along with that.
Iron Man 2 and 3 go back and forth for me on that title.
I like Iron Man 3. I like Iron Man 3 a lot, actually.
Oh,
there you go.
no.
I'm
Just
with
go
Dana.
watch Kiss Kiss
too.
Bang Bang. You'll be so much happier.
It's very Shane Black,
I know,
yes.
I know, that's why I love it. Apart from the rather, stock robot fight at the end. I thought up till that point it was great. I know a lot of people don't like what it did to Mandarin, but I thought that was a brilliant twist. But there you go.
Ben Kingsley really sold it too.
Yeah.
And actually, even going into the Avengers, a lot of people forget about the huge contract disputes and money disputes that Marvel was having with their stars, where Robert Downey Jr. was basically lobbying to get his rest of stars more money. There's Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Mark Ruffalo, and even, Ed Norton didn't come back from The Incredible Hulk. They had to recast him with Mark Ruffalo. So going into Avengers, there was this very is this thing going to get pulled off? Yeah. Are we going to be able to have a successful movie with all this kind of stuff going into it? Thor managed to be kind of okay. I think Captain America: First Avenger was kind of in those same veins too, but better. It was a solid film, especially as far as adapting Captain America go. I think it was the most we could have expected at that point in time. And it wasn't super great vibes going into the Avengers. They really had to do a lot to win it over. I think the DCEU is in a similar position, but it's a bit worse because we don't have that Iron Man level film to go off a basis of, okay, if we could get to this, then everything's going to be great. Right now, Wonder Woman is that film. Yeah. And Wonder Woman itself is not excellent enough to say, okay, you got to get to at least this. If Justice League manages to be just as good as Wonder Woman, then it's a failure. I think that's the sad thing. If it's just like, okay, this is enjoyable, but it's not breaking a mold or doing anything that we haven't seen before, especially now we've gotten to this point where Marvel can basically throw anything up on the screen and have it be an enjoyable movie. Like, here's Doctor Strange, here's Ant-Man, and you're gonna be able to at least tolerate it, and then it's likely going to be a good movie. It has to really bring it. I'm cautiously optimistic with the reception to Wonder Woman, but then again, this is Patty Jenkins, and she was able to make a good movie on top of this character. Mm-hmm. Justice League is still by Zack Snyder, and of course we know the issues that have gone on now. They're in reshoots right now. Snyder had to step away after the tragic death of his daughter, and all feelings with his family, because it's a really, really terrible thing to have to go through. So everybody understands the position he's in right now. Joss Whedon steps in to take care of the reshoots, and
that felt like a twist on this whole situation. Like, wait, Joss, don't you have like a contract, something in your contract with Marvel that you're like not allowed to help their opponents or something, their competitors?
He's been liberated, I believe.
I guess. Now, come on, those Marvel snipers are totally still following him.
Probably.
You know they must be.
Like, don't give away any trade secrets that we had on the set. And now it's very much up in the air of how this film is going to be. Like, how much are the reshoots and Joss Whedon's take gonna turn this film? I hate to say that, like, just Snyder's involvement alone means that it's gonna be a poor film or not that great received, because I mean he's done some great things. I love 300. Yeah. I think Dawn of the Dead, his remake, is still one of the best horror movies to come out in a really long time. Definitely one of the best of the 21st century.
Honestly,
that we got.
I really like Sucker Punch. Like,
well, I think he might be in the more there.
Yeah.
I know. Listen, I know.
Own it though, girl. Own it. But I think it's generated enough with what's going on and the way they're doing things to warrant, okay, maybe we could go into this film. Maybe Wonder Woman is the signifier that's going to change the course. But as David said, a lot of it is going to hinge on the success of Justice League. If that movie doesn't hit, then I don't know who else is going to be. I mean, you'll have the DC faithful still turning up to see these movies, but I think the general audience is going to get turned off really quickly. You saw how much bad press and bad word of mouth hurt Batman v Superman. That movie failed to make $1 billion, to where, I mean, we got Guardians of the Galaxy making already right now Batman v Superman money. Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the freaking Galaxy.
Which
nobody knew about.
Yeah.
I've been reading comic books all my life, knew jack shit about the Guardians of the Galaxy up until a couple of years ago. And they can turn that kind of profit, get that sort of thing going with such obscure projects.
Yeah,
and Batman v Superman couldn't.
It will be very interesting to see what the box office figures are tomorrow for Wonder Woman, to see how word of mouth does affect the DCEU. Because if there's a big I don't necessarily, actually maybe leave it a couple of weeks and see what its drop off is and so forth. If it's got legs, which no DCEU movie has managed so far at all.
Actually, I got my notes right here.
Yes.
This weekend, it's broke 100 million. I think 100.2 million is its take for Wonder Woman this weekend, which is very good, really, really solid, and bodes well. And I think typically when you see second weekend drop off with these sort of tentpole films is around the 50% range. If it hangs around there,
if you go below 60%, you know it's because you made a shit film.
Yeah.
That had a lot of marketing behind it. That's generally the rule. I think also there is, I mean, the thing with the DCU is it would probably be okay if it existed in a bubble, but it doesn't. It exists in a world with a lot of other comic book films, an awful lot. And that's another thing about the Justice League, is there's a chance for Marvel to move the goalposts again before the Justice League arrives, because they get their biggest hitter back onto their roster with Spider-Man this summer, which the trailers, everything I've seen from that film just looks awesome. I'm so much more psyched for that than I am anything coming out of the DCEU.
Do you guys think that possibly the isolation of this Wonder Woman film too kind of hurts its potential, hurts its potential as a telling sign on what's to come for the DCEU? Because it is pretty much a period piece. It doesn't have really any ramifications. There's some world building, some mythology, a lot of it going into it, but it can really honestly be its own movie, completely disassociated from the DCEU. Yeah. So is it a good telling sign, or are we still kind of going to have to wait and see how it goes from here?
Well, I think I read something about, like, Patty Jenkins was in talks for the sequel, and she was saying that the plan was...
I think she's been confirmed for the sequel already.
Yeah, the plan was always to have another period piece, which likely means World War II, which, okay, cool. They're setting up, Wonder Woman as someone who's been in this world for a while. I think we'll really get to see a lot of good character growth. But I think in order for it to be a really good movie and to be able to build its own sort of franchise, I think that there's a lot of little changes that they'll have to do differently than they did for the first one. I really think that they need to get a female writer for the script. I think that they need to have a much stronger female cast, because sure, we got some of the Amazons on Themyscira, but then as soon as she comes into the world of man, it's literally all men. So I'd love to see her finding a really good support system in the real world and, actually being a beacon of social justice. Like, I think she's got to try to be her own thing instead of just being like, oh, I'm just a generic hero.
Yeah, with politics aside, is what Wonder Woman has always been.
Exactly.
That's always been her characterization.
Exactly.
Too.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they took a very easy setting to put a female female lead comic book character in. into a time when it was unquestionably chauvinist.
Right.
And it's just, yeah, of course, everyone's surprised to see a woman doing these things. Putting her into the modern day is going to be more of a challenge, really. And to see how, because she's, obviously she's not stupid, but she is a bit of a simpleton about how she goes. Everything's very black and white to her, so there's no,
I would prefer
there's no
the
real
term naive.
Yeah.
Innocent, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, maybe, I don't know. It's just naive was probably a politer way of putting it, but yeah, it's just I don't think that she's not that interesting a character at the moment. She's just
honestly, she was written very flat.
Yeah,
is the problem, is that I would have loved to see a bit more character growth. As it was, I feel like we got a lot of Gal Gadot parroting what other characters said to her in the movie, and she repeats it back later. Like, it just felt very much like, sure, that's cool. I like the idea that she was absorbing the world around her, and she's actually learning and taking into consideration how other people feel and what they're saying. But I would have also liked to see a little bit more of that, like, righteous fury that she gets when she goes into battle for the first time. I would have liked to see a little bit more independent thought on her part, which is why I think continuing on in a period piece, just going through the different times in history, like, hey, how do you think Wonder Woman's going to deal with, like, the civil rights movement and stuff? I think in the future might be a way more interesting than just watching her punch bad guys.
Now that you mentioned that, Erin, do you think they'd be better served going another route of having a period piece, or kind of doing what, say, Marvel did with Captain America, where we had the one period piece that introduced him during World War II, then we went straight into the contemporary world and the struggles with S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra, everything like that, to where you had to take a character who had a very black and white view, a lot of naivety, thrust them into these really gray area sort of conflicts that go in the modern day world. Would Wonder Woman be a character best suited for that sort of contemporary introduction, or should we kind of just chart her path in future films and see how she develops along the course of human history?
I think we need to see the latter. I really think we need to see how she grows and how she adjusts to the world as it changes around her, because with Captain America, he was trapped in ice, so the modern world is shocking and new, and unless they decide to make Wonder Woman spend 50 years back on Themyscira again, she's not going to be startled by the idea of what the world is. I would much rather watch her become an ambassador for between Themyscira and the rest of the world, the way that she is in much of the comics, and watch her character growth, because, like I said before, I don't really think it'll be that interesting just to watch her team up with Batman, Superman, just exclusively punching people. I want to see more of the character that we get in a lot of those comics, and she has so much heart and spirit in the comics that I really just wish we had seen in this film.
David?
I see what Erin's saying, but I think for her to really be a true female icon, to really lead the comic book genre, I think she needs to move into the modern day. I think the fact is that, yes, she's no longer going to be the fish out of water as she moves through history. She is going to adjust, and I think we can give audiences enough credit that they're going to accept that she's been through all of that, because like Erin very adroitly pointed out, Steve Rogers was just pushed into the modern era with no preparation whatsoever. But that's pretty much what happens in Wonder Woman. So in a way, they've combined those two elements already. I think it would be more interesting. I think it would have more to say about femininity in the genre if it was in the modern day. I'm not really sure what they can do with the Second World War that they can't do with the First World War, other than that the sides in the war are a lot more clear from a moral point of view.
More Nazis too.
Yeah, well, there's Nazis. That's exactly. See, World War One was a very complicated conflict. There were no real goodies and baddies. Which is why it was such a good setting to put Ares into there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't really have him come back for World War II. That would have been a massive mistake to set it in that, which they didn't do. So, yeah, I mean, the civil rights movement, that would be interesting. I mean, of course, how most people are familiar with Wonder Woman is a product of the civil rights movement with Linda Carter in the 70s TV show and stuff. That was very symbiotic of that whole thing at the time. And, yeah, I mean, that would be it would be interesting to see a lot of comic book characters, male and female, involved in more, I don't know, political type situations through history. Well, I suppose we've got to see the X-Men in Watergate, kind of.
I'm a little bit split on it personally. I am leaning more towards a contemporary sequel for Wonder Woman, just because I do feel like there is a little bit more that can be gained from having her in modern day society. But also, here's the problem too. We look at DC's upcoming slate of films. We have basically, really right now, Justice League and Aquaman coming up. Aquaman, again, is going to be kind of this isolated thing. I believe James Wan said it takes place after Justice League, but it's going to be entirely underwater in Atlantis. No word on a Man of Steel sequel, what's going to happen with that. The Batman, we might not get until 2019 at this point in time. Then the films they've announced after that, Joss Whedon's Batgirl, Nightwing, all these films that are announced and are starting to be very Batman-centric, and the greater portion of the DC universe is starting to get ignored. So I think right now they might be better served having Wonder Woman supplant all of that by having her sequel come out as a contemporary film to take place more in the greater DCEU. Because my reservations with that is like, okay, why is Warner Brothers making the Batman portion of the DCEU the focus from here on? Oh yeah, with Gotham City Sirens too. That's also coming out. So you got between that's 4 Batman-focused films coming out in their next slate. That tells me, I might be reading too much in it, that kind of tells me something with Justice League probably isn't working.
Yeah, I agree.
If they're leaning that hard into the Batman mythos, and I mean, whatever your thoughts on Man of Steel was, it's still a kind of tragedy that movie did as well as it did, made as much money as it did, and they are in no rush to get Henry Cavill back out there for a sequel at all whatsoever. So they really seem to keep pushing the DC characters other than Batman to the background while they bring everything Batman related to the forefront. So I would like to see a more even distribution of films from DC from here on, because if all they want to do is just make a Batman universe, they could just reboot a Batman film and just have spinoffs takes place from there. But why introduce us to this greater universe if all we're going to do is spend time in Gotham City from there on?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you were saying about bringing Wonder Woman into the modern age. You could bring in some more fringe characters in that way, just like Marvel have done with the Captain America films. Mm-hmm. They've brought fringe Marvel heroes in that way. Yeah, I think going down this Batman route is going to be a huge mistake for the DCEU. He is the most overused and exposed superhero there is.
He's absolutely one of the most recognizable at this point.
He is,
they
so
know
he makes
that they can
money,
make money off him.
Yeah, I'm about to say they're most bankable. He sells toys and he puts butts in the movie theater.
But Marvel did it without those kind of characters. They've dominated the genre.
That's true.
So why are we getting an Aquaman film after Justice League? It's why haven't they taken their time? It's this rush to get in on the game that's going to let DCEU down. But yeah, you're right. The fact that they're not showing this huge range of have we got a Flash movie slated or anything like that? I know we've got the TV show.
Like I mentioned earlier, they took it off due to 3 different directors dropping out of film at this point in time. Yeah. They can't find anyone to take the helm. It's going through currently a page 1 rewrite. They're completely rewriting the script. Wow. So when we get that movie, if we get that movie, it's still up in the air right now. I'm a little bit divided because Batman is one of my favorite characters. I think a Joss Whedon Batgirl film has a lot of potential. Nightwing 2 is one of my favorite characters. Dick Grayson is probably my favorite comic book character, period, bar none. And I think it's been a long time since he's been properly done. And now I think about it, he's never been properly done in live action, from Burt Ward on to Chris O'Donnell. He's just never gotten his proper due and respect as a character. So
just watch Young Justice, man.
Yeah, that's pretty much And I really want to see them, because I think the exciting thing for Marvel going into their next phase, I guess Kevin Feige said they're doing away with the whole phases, is that we're not going to get these characters that we've been hinging on. There's not going to be an Iron Man 5 or 4, and there's not going to be another Captain America film. Those have wrapped up. They've been saying that we're going to see a completely different MCU from what we're accustomed to, and that's exciting to me. But I also think that there might be something into that, because if you remember, and I hate to diverge from the DCEU a little bit, but it's good to throw some variety into the show, I guess. Infinity War was going to be a 2-part film, and they're going to film it back to back and release it one year after another. Then all of a sudden they have this change to where, oh no, it's not going to be a 2-part anymore. We're not going to film it back to back. The next Avengers film is going to be its own sort of thing. And I'm thinking, okay, what could change over the course of this brief amount of time? When we know Marvel, they typically mean what they say, and they say what they mean. If they're going to make a movie, we're going to make Ant-Man. They make the goddamn Ant-Man movie. So for them to say they completely are changing course on an Avengers film, it's like, okay, something big has to be happening. And then there's also saying that the cosmic side of the universe is going to be of greater importance too.
Yeah, they do seem to be aiming more towards
I think they got Fantastic Four back from Fox. Or at least Fox is allowing them to introduce the Fantastic Four, or they have characters from it. They have something. They have something big that they got their hands on. They were saying, "Oh shit, we could completely change the game on how we're doing things right now, to where we can years ahead of time right now say, okay, for sure, this is what our universe is going to start looking like." And I mean, it could only be something like that, or are they going to do an X-Men versus Avengers movie or something crazy like that? But you look at the relationship they have with Fox, where they're partnering on TV shows, the trading characters back and forth, these sort of things. They have a very good working relationship. Fox knows that their Fantastic Four property is dead. Nobody, not a single person, will put their butts in movie theater to see another film from them. But I'm digressing a lot, but it just goes to show that the variety that you can introduce into both a film franchise and a shared universe is going to be the thing that really brings people out. Because now, we kind of know what the Marvel method is right now. We know what to expect from the movies, but there's still a variety that we're going to get between an Avengers film and Doctor Strange and Guardians of the Galaxy. If what it comes down to is the DCEU is bleak, Gotham City-based Batman films, it's going to get old really quick. And we need a Wonder Woman, we need a Superman, we need an Aquaman, we need a Flash to keep this universe fresh and interesting. And the crazy thing is that the DC roster of characters is so rich. They have so much that Marvel almost pales in comparison. And I think a Green Lantern Corps movie is still in development, but I mean, as far as active development, writing script, we got directors, people coming in, actors, things like that. It's all on the Batman side. So I think they really got to take this goodwill that they've built with Wonder Woman, and they've got to run with it, because their window is only going to be so big after Justice League comes out. And I'm not anticipating that it's going to be great, but I'm hoping that it's going to be great. And if it's not, and that's going to be a really tough thing for them to overcome. But I think we discussed DCU for long enough. We're going to skip into our next topic, which has actually been a really slow news week for comic book movies, comic books in general. I think the only major thing that have came out is Fox has pretty much wrapped up casting with their next X-Men spinoff movie, with New Mutants. So we've had a number of casts join the film. We have Blue Hunt join as Moonstar, Macy Williams of Game of Thrones fame join as Wolfsbane, Anya Taylor-Joy from Split join as Magic, Charlie Heaton of Stranger Things join as Cannonball, Henry Zaga as Sunspot, and of course the amazing Rosario Dawson joining as Dr. Cecilia Reyes. And I think an interesting thing too is that first James McAvoy was going to reprise his role as Professor X, but it looks like he will not be in the film, cameo or otherwise. That's going to be an entirely different thing here. And I also think the movie has an interesting take because they've been describing it as a horror movie within the superhero movie genre, which we haven't really seen entirely.
No, not really.
And
No, we haven't. I can't think of one we have. No, not based in superhero, in a kind of superhero type environment. No, definitely not.
What do you guys think about the casting so far? What stands out to you on this cast list that's been announced this week?
Oh, shall I go first? Yeah.
I'll go first because mine is a lot shorter, I'm sure. I haven't had a lot of time to look into this in particular. I think that they sound like they're getting a pretty good range of cast. Like they're actively going out and pulling people that we know have done really solid roles in the past, and I think that they're actually taking a lot of consideration into this from what it sounds like. And I love the idea that it's going to be a horror. And I love the idea that they're actively trying to do something different. I think that's really what we need. And from here on out, I really hope that, if we're going to keep milking this whole superhero trend, which don't get me wrong, I love the comic book stuff. But if we're going to keep just hitting it as hard as possible, they need to start considering what else it can be. It can't just be a superhero thing anymore. It has to be more.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and that's something that Fox have shown when they did Deadpool last year, which wasn't that big. It was still a pretty standard superhero film, but it had a very meta take on the whole thing. But Logan this year showed a very, very comic book film as a futuristic western.
Yeah.
That was pretty interesting, and it wasn't perfect, Logan. It did have some problems, but it was pretty admirable. I really enjoyed it, and it stuck with me probably a lot more than most other recent comic book films have. So yeah, I mean, going into the horror side of it, why not? The X-Men's probably the best universe in which to do that. So yeah, it sounds good. The presence of the cast all sounds promising. They don't sound like the kind of people who just sign up for anything. Maisie Williams in particular, she can pick and choose at the moment, surely. And
yeah, once you're one of the Game of Thrones cast, you got free reigns for projects after that.
So, yeah, I think that sounds really promising.
I think it's going to be interesting, well, both with Josh Boone on the film to helmet and going for his horror angle that he's going for, which is kind of quizzical, but he said it's not going to be superheroes in tights and no supervillains, that sort of things, which for an X-Men film kind of feels like, okay, that's the wrong way to go, because I think the knock on the franchise has been, okay, it's not really very close to his comic book counterparts, where in a lot of ways Marvel and even DC in some respects are basically just throwing their characters from 4 colors straight onto the screen without much changing, and we still have this X-Men universe that's very grounded and very still in the mold of what Bryan Singer started with the original set of films. And is that something that the faithfuls really want? Is it something that the audience really wants? Is it going to be something that's recognizable to them as a film within the superhero genre that they want to go see? Logan was in that vein, and it worked very well, but that was also the angle that they were going for with that movie. New Mutants have always been X-Men light, and they kind of have to embody that same superhero team dynamic. That's the whole purpose of them being, is to be the next generation of X-Men. So if they're not going to treat it like an X-Men movie, that doesn't sit so well right off the top. But it sounds interesting enough to give it a pass and see what they can do with the project. I think the cast stands out really well. I think Maisie Williams is great. Anya Taylor-Joy, I think she's one of the best young and up-and-coming actresses around right now. Charlie Heaton was really great in Stranger Things. I actually think for the character he's playing, which is Cannonball, he's a kind of a perfect choice for that character too. Not somebody I would think right off the top, but he's a little bit more of a aw shucks country boy. He's a bit meek as far as X-Men characters goes, and I think that'd be a good fit. I'm down for anything Rosario Dawson does. She's always great.
Agreed.
It's just going to be interesting to see how this starts to split things apart from the mainline X-Men franchise a little bit. Because we're on this trend now of Deadpool coming out, Logan coming out, both terrific, well received. So this film kind of has to keep the streak going. I believe Deadpool 2 comes out prior to it, but this is going to be the real first like post Bryan Singer involvement X-Men style film that we're going to get. So it'll have quite a bit riding on it, as will the next major X-Men film with the team that we are introduced to in First Class and Days of Future Past and Apocalypse and everything like that. Where it goes from here is kind of tough to say, but it definitely seems like Fox has got a lot of confidence in their X-Men franchise at this point in time. And I think one of the keys to their success is they're not overly concerned with continuity and where things fit in. What timeline Deadpool or Logan takes place in, I do not fucking know. Now, Fox clearly does not care as long as it's a good film and people are going to line up to see it.
I did want to ask if you guys thought there's any chance of Legion and Logan sort of somehow existing around the same time. Because I know Legion's very, like, strange and surreal, and it doesn't give you a good idea. It feels like it's set in the 60s, but it's clearly modern. But at the same time, the ending sort of implies that...
they got some crazy technology around that point in time. Yeah, that's a good question, because...
they feel like they could fit together very, very well.
Yeah,
somehow.
Noah Hawley definitely mentioned on how he wanted Legion to be timeless in a sort of way. Like, you don't know if it's taking place... For a while, you think, okay, this is in the 70s, and then somebody pulls out a tablet. It's like, okay, well, and then you see, I don't know, a sci-fi ray gun all of a sudden or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, when is this? My personal headcanon is, I fill in the blanks because Fox won't, is that it actually takes place in the dead timeline of the X-Men Origins Wolverine film.
Oh, interesting.
That's what I personally believe.
Okay.
Which, continuity-wise, it actually kind of stands on its own because the things that take place in that movie don't line up with the original X-Men film or X2 or Days or anything. So if I had to look at it, I would guess that it's from those movies. And they drop a couple of hints and a couple of indicators that might point back to that movie. Just, I don't know if it was just for fun or Easter eggs or playing around with it. But I think it would be interesting, since Legion definitely does have that sort of fantastical horror-like element to it, if New Mutants would take place in a similar universe.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a way to connect it to.
That'd be pretty great.
Time will tell for sure how that goes. I don't know, David, did you even see Legion, by the way?
I saw the first episode and I liked it, but too much content.
There's so much going on.
We're drowning in it right now.
Yeah.
But I think that's pretty much going to do it for this episode. It was a short one and a sweet one. Everybody be sure to check us out at heroindex.net, of course. See the things that we got coming up. And be sure to check out David's video review for Wonder Woman. That's up now on our YouTube channel. Just search us on YouTube at Hero Index. And that's going to do it for us this week. David, Erin, thank you for stopping by. We look forward to catching up with you guys in a couple of weeks here.
No problem.
And, of course, all the listeners that tuned in, we'll see you again really soon. Everyone, take care. Okay, and cut. We could cut the recording right there.